I want to start by asking you a somewhat provocative question.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it.
So, what happens when you give absolute power to the most insecure, untalented, and, well, previously humiliated person you know?
Wow, that is quite a premise.
Right. Just picture it for a second. Imagine an internet troll. You know the type.
Oh, yeah, we all do.
Someone who spends literally all day tearing others down from this place of just deep inadequacy, someone armed with absolutely nothing but a fragile ego and a really loud vocabulary of moral outrage.
Right, a very specific kind of toxic personality.
Exactly. Now imagine you take that exact person and you hand them absolute dictatorial control over a wealthy, functioning estate.
That sounds like a nightmare.
It really does. No rules, no pushback, just unchecked authority over every single person around them. What does that world actually look like?
Well, it's a deeply unsettling thought experiment, honestly, because, we are historically conditioned to think of tyrants as these grand, sweeping figures.
Emperors or dictators with massive armies.
Exactly. People with institutional backing, strategic brilliance, huge political machinery.
Yeah, the big historical bad guys.
Right. But the kind of tyrant you're describing is far more intimate. And because it's intimate, it is incredibly psychologically destructive.
It's close to home.
Very close. Their tyranny isn't about statecraft, It's not about resource management. It is purely about personal revenge on a reality that, that never gave them the reverence they felt they naturally deserved.
And what's really fascinating here is that this exact scenario isn't just some modern hypothetical we made up.
No, not at all.
It was mapped out perfectly, like over 150 years ago.
It's amazing how history just repeats these psychological patterns.
It really is. So for today's deep dive, we are immersing ourselves in an incredible piece of source material. It's an Arabic audio narration of Fyodor Dostoevsky's classic, but honestly strangely overlooked comedic masterpiece, The Village of Stepanchikovo and Its Inhabitants.
Such a brilliant text. And the Arabic narration adds this really rich, layered interpretation to it.
Absolutely. And on the surface, the story is just this hilarious, almost slapstick account of a completely dysfunctional 19th century Russian household.
It is very funny.
But beneath the comedy, Dostoevsky is laying out a profound philosophical analysis of the mechanics of manipulation.
Which is really his specialty, isn't it? Peeling back the layers of human psychology.
Spot on. So our mission today is to use this text to look at the psychology of tyranny. And perhaps most importantly, the profound danger of what happens when absolute empathy meets absolute narcissism.
That is such a vital philosophical intersection to explore because Dostoevsky is pulling apart a very romanticized notion that we hold in society.
Which one?
Well, the idea that enduring hardship inherently purifies the soul.
Oh, right. The whole what doesn't kill you makes you stronger kind of thing, or kinder, rather.
Exactly. We like to think suffering makes people wiser and more compassionate. But with just absolute psychological precision, Dostoevsky demonstrates that sometimes suffering doesn't make a saint.
Sometimes it makes a monster.
Yes. Sometimes the right kind of suffering just creates the perfect, impenetrable tyrant.
Okay, let's lay out the board so you, listening, can see exactly how this dynamic is structured. We are at the Stepanchikovo estate.
Setting the scene.
Right. The legal owner is a retired cavalry colonel named Yegor Ilyich. We'll just call him the uncle to keep things simple.
Good call. Keep the Russian names manageable.
Yeah, exactly. So the uncle is wealthy, he's physically imposing, and he commands this huge estate with 600 serfs, or souls, as they were called back then.
A man of immense power, on paper at least.
Right, on paper. But this vast, wealthy household has been completely taken over by a bizarre, physically repulsive pseudo-intellectual named Foma Fomich Opuskin.
Foma Fomich, the ultimate dinner table tyrant.
The uncle holds the deeds, but Foma dictates reality.
And to understand how this bizarre inversion of power actually functions, we have to put Foma Fomich under the microscope.
We really do.
We need to look at the anatomy of this specific type of tyrant. Dostoevsky's physical description of him is very deliberate.
Oh, it's so specific.
It is. He's described as short, objectively ugly, with a double chin, ash blonde hair, and this perpetual look of arrogant demand on his face.
He just sounds miserable to be around.
Completely. He shuffles around the house in a dressing gown and slippers, yet he carries himself as if he were an emperor holding court.
Just walking around in his pajamas, acting like he owns the place.
Literally. And here's the kicker. He has never accomplished anything of note. He possesses absolutely zero actual talent,
None.
Yet he demands constant, breathless reverence from every single person in the room.
And his backstory is the engine driving this entire complex.
It explains so much.
It really does.
Yeah.
Before infiltrating the uncle's house, Foma was literally a clown.
A literal buffoon.
Yes, he was the resident buffoon for the uncle's late stepfather, the general. And the general was a notoriously cruel man. He subjected Foma to brutal daily humiliation.
The kind of systemic abuse that breaks a person.
Exactly. The source text details how Foma was forced to imitate animals, to make a total fool of himself, to endure relentless physical and emotional degradation just to get scraps from the general's table.
It's horrific, honestly.
It is. But the moment the general dies, Foma manages to enchant the general's widow, who is the uncle's mother, and he moves into the uncle's house.
And overnight, the dynamic flips.
Completely. He transforms from a submissive, cowering clown into an absolute dictator.
It is a breathtaking metamorphosis, just instant.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I'm genuinely struggling with the mechanics here.
What part?
Well, we are so culturally primed to love the underdog narrative.
Oh, for sure, the hero's journey.
Exactly. The kid who was bullied relentlessly grows up to be a deeply compassionate hero because he knows intimately what it feels like to be crushed.
Right, the wounded healer archetype.
But Foma is the dark inverse of this. It's as if you took an abused dog, finally let it off the leash, and instead of running free into the meadow, it immediately starts biting every other dog in the park just to prove it finally has teeth.
That is a very apt analogy.
Why doesn't his suffering translate into empathy?
Because, you are assuming his suffering led to reflection.
Oh.
Right, more than resentment.
Exactly. Philosophically, what we are looking at is the concept of ressentiment.
Resentiment, with an R at the end. The French pronunciation.
Yes. This is a term that was heavily conceptualized later by the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, but Dostoevsky is dramatizing the exact mechanism right here, decades earlier.
So what is it, exactly?
Well, ressentiment is not just holding a grudge. It's not just being mad at someone who hurt you. It is an ontological condition.
A state of being.
Yes, it is a deep-seated, festering hostility directed at reality itself. The person perceives reality as the fundamental cause of their absolute frustration and inadequacy.
So it's not even about the specific abusers anymore, it's about the whole world.
Exactly. Foma doesn't want equality. He doesn't want to abolish the cruel system that abused him.
Right, he doesn't want to burn down the master's house. No, he just wants his turn to be the master. He wants to be the abuser. He wants to inflict the exact humiliation he suffered onto others. The text explicitly notes a profound psychological truth. A crushed soul loves to crush others.
A crushed soul loves to crush others.
Wow, that is a chilling distillation of the human shadow.
It really gets to the core of it.
Because it completely dismantles the modern reflex to assume that victimhood automatically confers moral virtue.
Which is a very common assumption today.
It is. We assume victims are automatically good people. And Foma was a genuine victim. The abuse he suffered was real.
Very real.
But he weaponizes that victimhood. He demands constant praise in the uncle's house because his core identity isn't built on any solid foundation of achievement or internal worth. It's a void of profound insecurity.
And he becomes furious that the entire household doesn't constantly tiptoe around him, managing his emotions for him.
Walking on eggshells 24/7. Precisely. And pay attention to how he attempts to fill that internal void. Because he has no actual substance, he has to manufacture a completely delusional, grand narrative for himself.
Well, the delusions are wild in this story.
They really are. He claims he is currently writing a magnum opus, a masterpiece about creative forces that will be so profound it will cause a literal earthquake in Russia.
An earthquake. Just casually reshaping the entire country with his thoughts.
Right. And he gravely tells the uncle that after this book triggers a societal revolution, he, Foma, will retreat to a cave in the wilderness to pray day and night for the prosperity of the nation.
It's pure delusions of grandeur. It's actually almost funny.
It is funny, but the delusion serves a very structural purpose for him.
How so?
Well, when your core is completely hollow, your self-mythology has to be of cosmic proportions just to keep the crushing weight of your own mediocrity at bay.
Oh, wow. Never thought of it that way.
Yeah, if he admits he is just a mediocre man who is treated poorly, he has to face his own smallness.
And he can't do that.
No. So, by claiming he is a misunderstood savior on the verge of reshaping the cosmos, his current lack of accomplishment becomes evidence of his hidden genius.
Right. I haven't done anything because my thoughts are just too big for this world.
Exactly. And the way he treats people further exposes the lie.
Tell me about how he treats the serfs, because that really highlights his hypocrisy.
Oh, it's terrible. He actually goes out into the fields to lecture the serfs, the people doing the actual grueling labor on the estate.
The people keeping him fed.
Right. He starts lecturing them about astronomy, how the earth revolves around the sun, and the theory of electricity. Topics he clearly knows nothing about.
Just spouting nonsense to flex his intellect.
Totally. And when an old, wise peasant politely asks him a very simple question, Foma looks at him with absolute disgust and says, "That is none of your business, you fool. Move your head away so I don't spit on you."
Unbelievable.
This is how the supposed great moral philosopher treats the actual working poor.
So what we're analyzing here is the defense mechanism of a fraud.
Exactly. A total fraud.
He projects an aura of untouchable intellect, and he uses it as a blunt instrument to bludgeon anyone who might pierce the illusion.
That's why he's so aggressive.
Right. He is constantly scanning the room for any sign of disrespect, no matter how microscopic, because his entire empire is built on thin air.
Yes. If anyone points out that he's just an angry man in slippers who hasn't written a single page of this supposed masterpiece, the whole framework collapses.
Therefore, his best defense is perpetual preemptive offense.
Hit them before they can hit you.
Exactly. If he is always attacking your intellect and morality, you are too busy defending yourself to question his.
It's a very effective strategy.
I want you, the listener, to think about that dynamic for a second. Have you ever encountered someone whose entire sense of power is built on a foundation of unhealed grievances?
We all have, I think.
Someone who has an exhausting, desperate need to appear smarter, more moral, and infinitely more victimized than anyone else in the room.
It's draining just being around them.
It really is. Their entire personality becomes a fortress designed to protect a very fragile, very empty core. But here's the piece of the puzzle that really requires deep analysis.
What's that?
A tyrant like Foma cannot exist in a vacuum. A parasite requires a host.
Ah, yes.
And Dostoevsky gives us the ultimate host in the character of the uncle, Yegor Ilyich.
Precisely. To fully understand the pathology of the tyrant, we must dissect the philosophy of the enabler.
It takes two to tango.
It really does.
Yeah.
The tyrant's power isn't generated internally. It is entirely granted by the submission of the host.
So let's look at the uncle, because this is where the psychology gets incredibly dense.
Yeah.
Yegor Ilyich is a giant of a man.
A very impressive figure physically.
He is. The text describes him as physically strong, broad-shouldered, with a loud voice and an infectious laugh. He's a former military man.
A cavalry colonel, no less.
Right. And he has total legal and financial control over the estate and its 600 serfs. Yet he is painfully submissive to Foma.
Painfully is the right word.
Foma dictates his life down to the most absurd, microscopic details. There is this detail in the source material that is both hilarious and deeply tragic.
Oh, the sideburns.
Yes. The uncle actually shaved off his own sideburns, which he loved and was very proud of, simply because Foma told him they made him look too French.
What's fascinating here is that the sideburns are a brilliant narrative device.
How so?
Well, it seems like a trivial comedic detail, like, oh, he shaved his face, big deal. But philosophically, it represents the complete surrender of bodily and personal autonomy.
Wow. Handing over control of your own face.
Exactly. When you allow someone else to dictate your physical presentation based on their arbitrary whims, you have ceded ownership of your own identity.
And the mental surrender goes so much deeper than the physical.
Well, absolutely.
The uncle genuinely believes he is a terrible, selfish egoist, a monster of a human being, purely because Foma repeatedly tells him he is.
Foma just wears him down.
He really does. Foma will berate him for hours, and the giant cavalry officer just absorbs it, bowing his head, apologizing, and begging for forgiveness.
It's hard to read sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
And I have to play devil's advocate here because it strains credulity. How does a strong, capable, wealthy military commander just roll over for a guy in slippers?
And it doesn't seem to make sense.
Right. What is actually breaking through his defenses?
It's a crucial question, and this is where Dostoevsky explores what we might call the pathology of absolute goodness, or pathological altruism.
Pathological altruism,
Yeah.
meaning being too good.
Yes. The uncle's primary virtue His deep, abiding goodness and lack of malice is actually his fatal flaw.
That's so tragic.
It is. He is terrified of hurting anyone's feelings, and he is profoundly empathetic to the extreme suffering Foma endured as a clown.
He pities him.
Right. Because of this empathy, the uncle completely suspends his own critical thinking. He equates yielding with virtue.
Wait, yielding with virtue, that's a huge point.
It's everything. He believes that to be a genuinely good person, you must endlessly accommodate the pain of others, even when that pain is actively being weaponized to abuse you.
He equates yielding with virtue. That is a profound vulnerability. So if the uncle attempts to stand up for himself, or if he tries to set a basic boundary, he internally feels like he's being cruel to someone who has already been broken by the world.
Exactly. Setting a boundary feels like abuse to him.
And Foma must recognize this mechanism.
Oh, Foma doesn't just recognize it, he masters it.
He plays him like a fiddle.
Completely.
Yeah.
He understands that the uncle is completely defenseless against moral accusations.
Give me an example of how that works.
Well, if you accuse a narcissist of being selfish, they will attack you. They'll deflect, get angry, right?
Yeah, of course.
But if you accuse a deeply altruistic person like the uncle of being selfish, he doesn't defend himself. He immediately searches his own soul to find how he might have accidentally caused harm.
Because he wants so badly to be a good person.
Precisely. Foma exploits this weaponized conscience perfectly, and he pairs this relentless moral manipulation with intellectual intimidation.
Right, because the uncle isn't an academic.
No, the uncle is an uneducated military man. He possesses a blind, almost naive reverence for science and literature. Because he doesn't understand these fields, he assumes anyone who uses complex vocabulary or who claims the title of philosopher must possess profound wisdom.
And the Gorovkin incident illustrates this perfectly.
Oh, Gorovkin. That part is incredible.
It's so funny. The uncle is waiting on pins and needles for the arrival of this man named Gorovkin. Who is Gorovkin? He is literally just a random guy the uncle picked up on the side of the road.
Just a hitchhiker, basically.
Literally. And why? Because the guy told him, I am a scientist.
That's all it took?
It's all it took. The uncle is vibrating with excitement, telling the whole household, a great mind is coming, a man of science. He simply assumes the stranger is going to bring profound enlightenment to the estate, based entirely on the man's own unverified claim.
It's highly comedic, but it highlights a very dangerous cognitive blind spot.
Which is?
When you combine intellectual ignorance with a deep, humble respect for intellect, you create the perfect prey for pseudo-intellectual grifters.
Wow. Ignorance plus respect equals prey.
Yes. The uncle reveres the idea of knowledge so deeply that he lacks the framework to distinguish between genuine wisdom and confident, empty jargon.
So when Foma starts talking.
Right. Foma throws around phrases about creative forces and the cosmos, and the uncle simply bows his head in awe. He assumes his own lack of comprehension is proof of Foma's brilliance.
I see the mechanism now. The uncle's humility tells him, if I don't understand what Foma is saying, it must be because Foma is operating on a higher plane and I'm too simple to grasp it.
Exactly.
It literally never occurs to the uncle that there is a third option.
Which
Foma's talking absolute nonsense.
Right. And Foma's entire psychological empire relies on that specific blind spot. It is a symbiotic relationship built on dysfunction.
They feed off each other.
They do. The tyrant provides the moral and intellectual certainty that the enabler craves, and the enabler provides the material comfort and an unquestioning worship that the tyrant requires to survive.
But Foma's ambition cannot stop at merely controlling the uncle.
No, a tyrant is never satisfied with just one victim.
A tyrant can never feel truly safe until he controls the very environment itself. He has to bend the culture and the language of the household to his will.
Which brings us to the servants.
Yes, which brings us to how he forces his twisted idea of refinement on the servants. This part of the text feels incredibly surreal and shockingly modern.
It really does echo modern power dynamics.
It really does. So Foma decides that Gavrila, a dignified 63-year-old lifelong serf, needs to be civilized.
A man who has spent his whole life running this huge estate.
Right, a highly capable elder. And Foma forces this poor, terrified old man to learn French vocabulary.
It's so humiliating.
It is. And he isn't teaching him French so they can communicate. He is forcing Gavrila to stand there like a schoolchild, quizzing him on French words, while Foma openly mocks his pronunciation.
We need to analyze the underlying philosophy of what Foma is doing here, because this is an exercise in subjugation through language.
Subjugation through language. Break that down for me.
By forcing Gavrila to stumble through a foreign tongue, Foma strips him of his natural competence. Gavrila knows how to run an estate, right? He has decades of practical wisdom.
He's probably the most competent guy there.
Exactly. But by changing the vocabulary of the household to French, Foma forces Gavrila onto a playing field where Foma is the undisputed master, and Gavrila is reduced to a helpless, ignorant child.
It's completely alienating him from his own reality.
Yes.
And we see an even more extreme version of this with Vytoplyasov.
Oh, Vytoplyasov, that is a dark psychological case study.
It really is. So Vytoplyasov is another servant whom Foma has essentially claimed as his personal secretary.
Right.
But Foma has so completely colonized this man's mind that Vytoplyasov no longer believes he is a servant. He believes he is a tragic, noble poet.
A poet who writes truly terrible poetry.
Horrible poetry. He writes these agonizingly melodramatic poems. One is literally titled The Whale of Vytoplyasov.
The Whale of Vytoplyasov. You can't make this up.
But the most disturbing part is that Vytoplyasov constantly begs the uncle to let him legally change his last name.
Which was a big deal back then.
A massive deal. And why? Because the name Vytoplyasov sounds too common and peasant-like, and it doesn't fit the poetic identity Foma has constructed for him.
He wants to escape his own heritage.
Exactly. So he proposes these absurd, fabricated, foreign-sounding names.
Yes, the names he suggests, Ulyanov, Tuyupanov, Dantsev, Azbukatov, they're desperate, comical attempts to construct a synthetic, elevated identity that aligns with the oppressor's aesthetic.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to draw a modern parallel here.
Yeah.
This mechanic feels so familiar.
How so?
It reminds me exactly of toxic corporate environments.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
You know the scenario. A new, highly toxic manager comes into a perfectly functional department and immediately starts instituting layers of meaningless corporate jargon.
Buzzwords everywhere.
Exactly. Suddenly you aren't writing a report, you are actioning a deliverable to synergize core competencies.
And if you don't use the words, you're not a team player.
Right. And it's not about improving the work. It's about introducing a vocabulary that makes the existing employees feel stupid, off balance, and alienated from the jobs they already know how to do perfectly well.
They lose their footing.
The manager controls the language, and by doing so, controls the reality of the office.
That is a very precise analogy, and it maps perfectly onto the philosophy of language and power, a dynamic that the 20th century philosopher Michel Foucault analyzed extensively.
Foucault talked about this.
He did. Foucault posited that power isn't just held by armies or laws, it is embedded in discourse, the very vocabulary and frameworks we use to describe reality.
So whoever controls the dictionary controls the kingdom.
Essentially, yes. If you dictate the terms of the conversation, you dictate the limits of what can even be thought. Vytoplyasov's desire to change his name represents a total alienation from his own roots and his own history.
He wants to erase himself.
He wants to erase his actual self and replace it with a hollow, artificial identity handed down to him by Foma. When the oppressor controls the language, the oppressed will voluntarily erase their own identity to comply.
Man, that is dark. But Dostoevsky doesn't let Foma's linguistic tyranny go entirely unchecked.
No, he gives us a moment of rebellion.
There's a breaking point with Gavrila, the older servant. After being relentlessly mocked for his inability to master French, Gavrila finally snaps.
He reaches his limit.
He finds his spine. He stands up to Foma, right in front of the uncle and the assembled guests, and he delivers this incredibly grounding statement. He says, "I may be a poor serf, but I am created in the image of God. I am 63 years old. You are a wicked man."
It is a breathtaking moment of clarity in the text. Dostoevsky is drawing a stark philosophical contrast here regarding the nature of true dignity.
Dignity isn't about speaking French.
Exactly. The uneducated servant, who has spent his entire life in servitude, possesses a profound understanding of his own inherent worth. He recognizes his unshakable moral dignity as a human being created in the image of God.
He knows who he is.
Yes. Meanwhile, the educated master, Foma, who constantly pontificates about cosmic forces and high morality, possesses absolutely zero moral dignity.
He's just an empty shell.
Dostoevsky is illustrating that education, refinement, and complex vocabulary, when divorced from actual empathy, are nothing more than sophisticated veneers for cruelty.
I want you to think about your own experiences for a moment. Have you ever been in an environment, maybe a workplace, a family dynamic, or even a social circle, where someone uses complex language, academic theories, or even therapeutic jargon not to communicate, but to establish dominance?
We see that so much with pop psychology today.
We really do. They build a wall of complex words designed specifically to make you feel small, confused, and subordinate.
It is the weaponization of intellect. And Foma doesn't stop at weaponizing language. He goes further, attempting to weaponize art and morality themselves.
Oh, this part is fascinating.
It introduces a fantastic philosophical debate within the narrative regarding the ethics of art, specifically the tension between gritty realism and forced moralizing idealism.
Yes, the scene with Falali. It is simultaneously bizarre and incredibly revealing.
Set that one up because it's so strange.
Okay, so Falali is a young, naive, very beautiful servant boy on the estate. Foma catches Falali doing something completely normal for a young peasant. He's dancing.
Just being a kid.
Right. Specifically, he's dancing the Kamarinskaya. For context, the Kamarinskaya is a traditional, wildly popular Russian peasant dance, but the folk song that accompanies it is essentially about a rowdy drunkard stumbling out of a tavern.
It's a bit buddy.
Yeah, it is earthy, it is real, and it reflects actual peasant life.
And Foma's reaction to this completely natural expression of folk culture is entirely disproportionate.
He loses his mind. He throws a massive tantrum, drags the terrified, crying boy in front of the entire household, and begins aggressively interrogating him about the morality of the dance.
Like it's a crime.
He treats a boy doing a folk dance like it's a severe moral failing. And from there, Foma launches into this sweeping, pseudo-intellectual monologue about the true purpose of literature and art.
His grand aesthetic theory.
Right. He argues that contemporary writers are wasting their time describing nature, or worse, depicting real, flawed, drinking peasants. Instead, Foma demands that art should only ever depict highly moral, sanitized, idealized peasants.
He wants propaganda, essentially.
Exactly. He wants stories about poor people who are blissfully grateful for their extreme poverty, who never complain about their lot in life, and who happily share their last dry crust of bread with wealthy noblemen, thereby uniting the top and bottom of society in perfect utopian harmony.
It is a stunning piece of rhetoric. And philosophically, this raises an important question about the function of truth in art.
Because art is supposed to reflect reality.
Right. Usually, yes. But Foma is advocating for a deeply tyrannical aesthetic. He is demanding that art must be forbidden from reflecting reality.
Because reality is messy.
Reality is very messy. The objective reality is that peasants live brutal, exhausting lives, and sometimes they drink to escape that crushing hardship. But Foma demands that art must function as ideological propaganda. It must present a sanitized fiction designed exclusively to comfort the ruling class and protect Foma's own delicate sensibilities.
But let's unpack the staggering hypocrisy here. Foma spends half his day preaching about his profound love for the common man, how his heart bleeds for the poor.
Oh, constantly.
Yet the moment he is faced with an actual, real-life peasant boy enjoying a piece of actual peasant culture, he is repulsed. He claims to love the poor, but he actually despises them as they truly exist.
He only loves the idea of them.
Right. He only loves a fictional, heavily edited version of the poor that serves his ego and doesn't challenge his artificial refinement.
Exactly. What Dostoevsky is critiquing here is the subtle cruelty of utopian idealism. Foma's demand for forced moralizing in art is, in practice, a form of psychological oppression.
How does that oppression work in this context?
Let's break down the mechanics of what Foma is really asking for. He wants to erase the complex, often ugly truth of peasant life because to acknowledge that truth would require him to practice actual empathy.
And he doesn't want to do that.
No, he doesn't. If he looks at a drunken peasant and sees the suffering that causes the drinking, he has to feel genuine compassion. Foma is incapable of that depth of feeling.
Because he's so self-obsessed.
Right. So, to avoid the discomfort of empathy, he demands that the flawed peasant be erased entirely and replaced with a smiling, grateful saint.
It's the demand for performative subjugation.
Precisely. It is the underlying mechanism of what we often call toxic positivity today.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It is the oppressive demand that the marginalized or the suffering must perform perfect gratitude and flawless morality, simply to be deemed worthy of existence or artistic representation. If your suffering makes the oppressor uncomfortable, your suffering is deemed immoral.
That is incredibly dark. He is essentially telling them, your reality is aesthetically offensive to me, therefore you are not allowed to express it.
Aesthetic tyranny masking as moral superiority.
That is a perfect way to phrase it. And Foma's performative morality reaches its absolute mind-bending peak when his authority is finally accidentally challenged by the uncle.
The climax of the book.
Yes, which leads us to the climax of the psychological warfare in the house, the ultimate master-slave inversion.
The psychological mechanics of this climax are a masterclass in manipulation.
Let me set the scene for you. The entire household is gathered together, and the tension in the room is suffocating. The uncle, desperate to just lighten the mood and be a normal, gracious host, tells a funny, self-deprecating story.
He just wants people to relax.
Right. He tells a story about a time he made a silly mistake at the theater. He confused a man's wife with his ugly cousin. It's a harmless, bumbling story, and the room naturally erupts in laughter.
Genuine laughter.
Yes. But that laughter distracts the room from Foma. For 2 minutes, Foma is not the center of attention, and so Foma explodes.
The narcissistic injury is triggered instantly by the mere absence of total focus.
He erupts with furious indignation. He accuses the uncle of telling an obscene, immoral story. He accuses the uncle of being an arrogant egoist who is using his position as the wealthy lord of the manor to insult a poor, defenseless guest casting himself as the victim.
He flips the script immediately.
Completely. Foma goes into full theatrical mode. He threatens to leave the estate forever. He dramatically pulls money out of his pocket money that the uncle gave him to survive, mind you, and throws it on the floor, declaring that he is spiritually above material wealth and will walk to Moscow on foot just to escape this den of sin.
Just a massive temper tantrum.
It is. And how does the uncle react? The uncle is utterly crushed. He truly believes he has committed a mortal sin. He falls to his knees on the floor, weeping, begging Foma to stay, apologizing profusely for his crimes.
We must analyze the objective reality versus the constructed reality here.
Let's do it.
Objectively, Foma is physically a guest in the house. Financially, he is a complete dependent. Legally, he is a commoner with no rank, while the uncle is a decorated military colonel and a wealthy landowner.
The power should be entirely with the uncle.
Yes. Yet, through sheer force of aggressive rhetorical manipulation, Foma convinces the lord of the manor that Foma is the helpless victim being cruelly oppressed.
It is an epic inversion of reality. We see the mechanics of this in abusive relationships, where the abuser acts erratically, the victim attempts to diffuse the tension, the abuser frames the diffusion as an attack, and suddenly the victim is the one apologizing.
It's classic gaslighting.
But Foma pushes the boundary even further. To grant his forgiveness to the uncle who is still weeping on his knees, Foma demands something outrageous.
This is the craziest part.
He tells the uncle that from now on, the uncle must address Foma as Your Excellency.
Which is a title reserved strictly for generals in the Imperial Russian system.
So he has no right to it.
It is a title Foma has absolutely zero legal or social right to claim.
Right. And even the submissive uncle hesitates. He says, "But Foma, that's against the law of ranks. You aren't a general. How can I call you that?"
The uncle is finally trying to use logic.
But it doesn't work. And here is where Foma deploys the most twisted, paralyzing philosophical logic I think I have ever encountered. I need you to break this down for me because it is a mental labyrinth. How does Foma justify this?
This is the profound genius of Dostoevsky's understanding of ideological manipulation. Let's trace Foma's exact argument.
Okay, lay it out.
Foma tells the uncle, "You claim to respect me as a man of profound science, a man of soaring intellect, and a man of pure virtue."
Which the uncle does claim.
Right. But you refuse to call me Your Excellency simply because of an arbitrary societal rule about military ranks. This proves your respect is entirely fake. It proves you only care about superficial earthly titles, and you don't care about the true value of the soul.
Wow. Just wow.
Foma argues that if the uncle truly believes in human equality, if the uncle truly respects inner virtue over worldly status, he must prove it by elevating Foma above those societal constraints.
So it's not a power grab, it's a test.
Exactly. Therefore, demanding the title Your Excellency is not about Foma wanting a fancy title. Foma frames it as a moral test of the uncle's spiritual enlightenment.
That is a terrifying mechanism. He completely traps the uncle in a moral paradox.
He really does.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, he weaponizes progressive egalitarian ideals to demand absolute superiority.
That's the brilliance of it.
He's essentially saying, to prove you are a good, open-minded, egalitarian person who doesn't care about the hierarchy of rank, you must worship me as your absolute superior and grant me the highest rank imaginable. If the uncle refuses, he proves he is shallow. If he agrees, he submits entirely to Foma's delusion.
It works perfectly because Foma uses the language of emancipation to construct an invisible cage. He uses the uncle's own best qualities, his desire to be fair, his genuine humility, his aspiration to be spiritually enlightened, as the very levers used to break him.
He uses the uncle's goodness against him.
Yes, Foma understands the ultimate vulnerability of the pathologically altruistic. If you appeal to a good person's desperate desire to be perfectly good, you can make them justify their own total degradation.
Think deeply about that mechanism. Think about how manipulative individuals can use our own best qualities against us. Our desire to be open-minded, our desire to be kind, our deep-seated fear of being judgmental or prejudiced. These are beautiful, necessary human traits.
They are what make us human.
But in the hands of a Foma Fomich, they become the exact buttons he pushes to make you kneel.
Dostoevsky has provided us with a comprehensive masterclass in the philosophy of manipulation. Through the seemingly absurd comedic setting of the Stepanchikovo estate, he has mapped the darkest corners of human psychology.
It's incredible how much depth is hidden in a comedy.
Truly. We have seen how unhealed humiliation, that toxic, festering resentment, does not forge compassionate saints. It creates intimate tyrants who view the entire world as a stage for their endless revenge against reality.
And equally importantly, we've seen how pathological empathy, goodness, divorced from boundaries, compassion completely devoid of critical thinking, creates the willing victims that tyrants require to survive.
The uncle is a cautionary tale.
The tragedy of the uncle is that he genuinely thought he was saving Foma, but his unchecked submission was really just feeding a monster. And we saw how the manipulation of language, the use of high-minded moralizing and complex jargon, serves not to reveal truth, but as a sophisticated weapon of alienation and control.
It serves as a stark, enduring warning for all of us. We spend immense cultural energy guarding against the obvious villains, the ones who announce their malice, the ones with overt structural power and armies behind them.
Right, the dictators and warlords.
But Dostoevsky's philosophical inquiry suggests that the most dangerous tyrant might not be a dictator on a screen. The most dangerous tyrant might be the one sitting right across from you at your own dinner table.
I mean, intimate tyrant.
Exactly. A tyrant armed with nothing but a fragile ego, a bottomless sense of grievance, and a sophisticated vocabulary of moral outrage used to paralyze your defenses.
That is the chilling truth at the core of this deep dive. So the next time you encounter someone demanding your absolute submission, whether it is an abrasive personality at work, a toxic dynamic in a relationship, or an internet troll demanding you adhere to their specific ideological vocabulary, and they are demanding the submission under the impenetrable guise of morality or intellect, I want you to remember Foma Fomich.
Keep him fresh in your mind.
Take a hard, critical look at the dynamic. Ask yourself, are you practicing genuine, healthy altruism? Or are you simply playing the role of the uncle, shaving your own sideburns and apologizing for existing, just to appease a tyrant in slippers?
And perhaps the most unsettling philosophical question Dostoevsky leaves us to ponder is this. Are the structures of our modern society, with its constant, inescapable demands for performative virtue, its reliance on public shaming, and its hyper-focus on victimhood as an ultimate status symbol, are we inadvertently constructing the perfect ecosystem to breed a whole generation of Foma Fomiches?
That is a thought to keep you up at night. Keep questioning the frameworks around you, keep digging into the mechanics of why people behave the way they do, and above all, keep your boundaries strong. We'll see you next time.